It was a quiet evening when Jason, a regular young man, found himself in the midst of a situation he never could have imagined. The world he had grown up in, filled with mundane problems and simple routines, was about to change forever. He had no idea how, no warning signs, and no way to prepare for the strange new reality that was about to collide with his. Jason had recently joined a government program, one that aimed to explore and study alien life. His role wasn't in the front lines or as an expert, but more as a regular worker, assisting with data collection. His days were spent in a lab, reviewing materials that had been brought back from different planets, always maintaining a distance from the more dangerous aspects of the research. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. Little did he know, this would soon thrust him into the heart of a deadly conflict. One particular evening, Jason was asked to deliver a package to the secure research facility where the most sensitive alien materials were stored. The place was highly guarded, the air thick with secrecy, and only the most trusted personnel had access. He had delivered items before, so it wasn't anything unusual, but today felt different. Something was off. As he walked toward the facility's entrance, a sudden loud alarm sounded. His heart raced. Before he could react, a team of armed soldiers sprinted past him, heading toward the inner sections of the base. They were clearly in a hurry, looking terrified. One of them shouted as they passed, "Code Red, evacuate the area immediately." Jason's confusion deepened as the reality of the situation set in. What could have possibly happened to warrant such an emergency? He had no idea, but instinct told him to turn around and leave. Yet, curiosity tugged at him. He was already in the facility and had to deliver the package, and something in the air felt like a puzzle that needed solving. His mind battled against his instincts as he stepped forward. With his pulse quickening, he turned the corner into the restricted area. The doors were sealed shut with flashing red lights, but they were still partially open. Jason squeezed through the gap, hoping no one would notice. The silence was deafening. He knew better than to go any further, but his body moved on its own accord, drawn deeper into the complex. That's when he saw her. A large, silvery figure was standing in front of a high-tech console, her back to him. She had the lithe frame of a fox, but her body glowed with an ethereal light. Her fur was covered in intricate patterns, pulsing softly with energy, and she seemed completely unaware of his presence. Jason froze. He recognized the figure immediately. It was a Vulpine, one of the alien species humanity had recently encountered. His heart pounded in his chest as he watched her carefully. The Vulpine were known for their intelligence and grace, but also for their mysterious nature. They had made contact with Earth just a few years earlier, and humans still knew very little about them. Their abilities were astounding, and their ways of communication were something humanity had yet to fully comprehend. But it wasn't the Vulpine's alien nature that made Jason's heart race. It was the way she stood. There was something incredibly intimate about her posture. Jason had never seen an alien so exposed, so vulnerable. She was in the process of undressing, a moment of quiet personal reflection or preparation before something more significant. He wasn't sure what it was, but the image of her standing there, so beautiful and unaware of him, struck him hard. His instinct screamed at him to leave, to escape from this forbidden moment. But before he could turn away, something unexpected happened. The Vulpine suddenly turned around. For the briefest of moments, their eyes locked. Jason's breath caught in his throat, a sudden overwhelming feeling of confusion and awe flooding his mind. But it wasn't just that. The Vulpine's eyes glowed with an intense light, almost as if she was searching through him, seeing deep into his soul. Jason felt an unfamiliar heat surge through him, a force he didn't understand. Then, without a word, she smiled. The smile wasn't what Jason expected. It wasn't surprised, nor was it angry. It was inviting, warm, reassuring, even comforting. But there was something else in that smile, something far deeper than friendliness. It was a gesture that seemed to carry the weight of an ancient understanding, something that spoke of connection beyond what human senses could interpret. And then, she spoke. "You are not supposed to be here," she said, her voice soft but commanding. Jason's heart thudded in his chest. The words weren't threatening, but there was an undeniable intensity in her tone. Before he could even form a response, the Vulpine extended her hand toward him, and the space around them seemed to shift. Time slowed, and for a brief moment, Jason felt himself caught in a wave of strange emotions, a mix of confusion, curiosity, and something much deeper, something that drew him closer to her. The air seemed to crackle with energy, and that's when he realized something he hadn't even considered before. He wasn't just in the presence of an alien species. He was standing on the precipice of something far more complicated, something far more dangerous. What had he walked into? What was she offering? Jason's life, once ordinary, had just taken a turn he would never have expected. Jason's mind raced as he stood frozen, unable to look away from the Vulpine woman who towered before him. Her presence was overwhelming. Her radiant, almost supernatural aura seemed to pull at him, drawing him into a space beyond mere physical proximity. His heart thudded in his chest, the weight of the moment pressing down on him like a heavy fog. Her smile never wavered, but her eyes remained intense, studying him with an almost unsettling focus. It was as if she could see right through him, into places he had never dared explore. His mouth went dry as he instinctively took a small step backward, his mind trying to make sense of the situation. The Vulpine's hand remained outstretched, palm facing upward, offering a connection, an invitation. But Jason couldn't shake the feeling that this gesture was not as simple as it seemed. The air around them was thick with unspoken tension, a wordless dialogue happening between them in ways he couldn't comprehend. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice calm, but filled with unspoken weight. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't curiosity. It was an expectation. Jason could feel the power in her voice, as though every syllable held centuries of knowledge and mystery. Jason opened his mouth, but no words came out. He hadn't meant to intrude on this sacred moment, but now that he was here, he couldn't find a way to retreat without further complicating things. What had he walked in on? What kind of invitation was she offering? I was just delivering a package," Jason stammered, his voice coming out shaky, as if he could barely grasp the reality of the situation. "I didn't know what was going on. I didn't mean to intrude." The Vulpine's lips curled upward slightly, almost as if she found his nervousness amusing, but there was still that deep, knowing quality to her expression. She stepped closer, her movements smooth and graceful, like liquid flowing over the rocks of a river. Her eyes never left his, the glow in them deepening as she closed the distance between them. "You've seen too much," she murmured, and it wasn't a threat. There was something more cryptic in her words, as though they held layers Jason couldn't yet fathom. Jason swallowed hard, but before he could respond, she spoke again, her tone shifting ever so slightly. "Human, you're not just delivering a package." Her gaze flickered down for just a moment, then back to him as though inspecting something much more than the surface of his being. "You're here because you're meant to be." The words hit him like a punch in the gut. Meant to be? Jason had no idea what she meant by that. He had been a mere delivery man, a small part of a much larger, more complicated machine. He had never once imagined that he would be involved in something far beyond his understanding. And yet, here he was, standing in the midst of something ancient, something he couldn't even begin to understand. There was an undeniable pull toward her, a magnetic force that made his heart race and his thoughts scatter. It was as if this moment had been written in the stars long before he ever set foot on this base. "I don't understand," Jason managed to say, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm just a normal guy. I don't belong here. The Vulpine stepped closer, and Jason instinctively took a step back, but she followed with a fluid grace that made him feel as if he were being drawn into her orbit. Her presence was overwhelming, a strange mixture of comfort and danger. "You misunderstand, human," she said softly, her voice almost hypnotic. "You are more than just a normal man. You are here because of what is to come. Because the war is about to begin." Jason's pulse quickened. War? What war was she talking about? His mind spun with 1,000 possibilities, none of which made any sense. What did a war have to do with him? "What do you mean?" "I don't know anything about a war," he asked, his confusion deepening. The Vulpine paused, tilting her head, as if considering something. Then, she took another step forward. Jason's breath caught in his throat, but there was no turning back now. "This war," she began slowly, her voice laced with something ancient and profound, "is not one you can imagine. It is a war for survival, for the very future of your species. And it will be fought between those who would see your world destroyed and those who wish to save it." Jason could hardly breathe. This was no ordinary conflict. It wasn't something he could understand in a simple sense. It was bigger, far more dangerous. "You are part of it now," the Vulpine continued, her eyes locking onto his with an intensity that sent shivers down his spine. "You've stepped into a larger world. A world where everything you know is about to change." Jason's thoughts swirled in a vortex of confusion and fear. He was just a delivery man. He didn't want to be involved in any kind of war. But the Vulpine woman was right. He had already crossed a line. His actions, no matter how innocent they seemed, had pulled him into something much bigger than himself. The air crackled again, and Jason could feel the weight of the situation press in on him. He wanted to ask more questions, to demand answers, but something in the way she held herself, the way she seemed to know him, kept him silent. Her gaze softened for a brief moment, as if she understood his fear, before she spoke again. "There is no going back now. You are a part of this story, whether you like it or not." And with those words, Jason realized something chilling. He wasn't just a spectator anymore. He was a player in a game that could determine the fate of humanity. And in the depths of his mind, he couldn't shake the feeling that his involvement might be more significant than he could ever understand. Jason's mind was reeling, overwhelmed by the weight of the Vulpine's words. A war for the survival of his species? This was something out of a science fiction novel, not his real life. But there she was, standing in front of him, her alien eyes glowing with intensity, her presence heavy with the gravity of a truth he couldn't deny. The silence between them stretched, thick and suffocating. Jason could feel the pulse of the facility around him, the humming of machines, the distant echoes of footsteps, but none of it seemed to matter anymore. He was trapped in this moment, a world he had never imagined, and yet was now deeply entangled in. The Vulpine was watching him carefully, as though waiting for something. She didn't look impatient, but Jason could tell she was expecting him to make a decision. His heart raced. What decision? What was there to decide? "You're not just a bystander," the Vulpine said, breaking the silence. Her voice was calm, but firm, as if she was speaking a truth that couldn't be altered. "You are part of this now, whether you want to be or not." Jason swallowed, trying to form words, but his thoughts were tangled. He had always been someone who followed the rules, someone who kept to the mundane, the predictable. He had never asked for any of this, and yet, here he was pulled into something that defied everything he had known. "I don't understand. I'm not special. I'm just a delivery guy," Jason said, his voice shaking with frustration. He wanted answers, wanted to understand how everything had spiraled so far out of control, but his mind was too foggy to make sense of it all. The Vulpine stepped closer, and Jason instinctively took a step back, though he didn't really want to move away from her. There was something about her presence, something magnetic that made him want to stay close, to listen, to understand. "You may think you're just a regular human," she said softly, "but there's more to you than you know. The war one speak of is not just a battle of weapons or forces, it's a battle for the soul of your kind. And you," she paused, her eyes narrowing with an almost knowing expression, "are the key." Jason's mind spun even faster now. A key? What did that even mean? How could someone so ordinary be the key to anything so vast and important? "The war is not between simple enemies," the Vulpine continued, her voice deepening. "It's between those who would shape the future of this galaxy, those who wish to control your planet and your kind, and those who seek to protect it. The powers at play are ancient, they are hidden. And you, Jason, have unknowingly stepped into their path." Jason's legs wobbled as the weight of her words sank in. He was in over his head. The package he had delivered, it wasn't just a mundane task. It had led him here, to this moment, to this alien standing before him who seemed to know more about him than he could understand. "Why me?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "A nobody." The Vulpine's eyes softened for a moment, a flicker of something resembling empathy crossing her face. "Because sometimes the ones who seem the least significant are the ones who hold the most power. You were chosen, Jason. Chosen by forces far older than anything you can imagine. You've come to this moment because your choices, your actions, have already set something into motion." Jason shook his head, feeling as if the floor had been pulled out from beneath him. He was stuck in a nightmare, a surreal reality where every step he took seemed to lead him deeper into something he couldn't control. "I don't want any part of this," he muttered, but there was a pit in his stomach, a deep, gnawing feeling. That told him that no matter how much he protested, he didn't have a choice. "You do have a choice," the Vulpine said, almost as if reading his mind. "But it's not about avoiding the war. It's about how you will choose to face it." Jason wanted to shout, to argue, but instead, a cold chill ran down his spine as he considered her words. Facing the war. How could he possibly face something so immense, so far beyond his understanding? He was a man who had spent his life in the shadows, watching from the sidelines, and now he was being thrust into the very center of a cosmic conflict. The Vulpine's eyes softened again, and this time, Jason could sense a deeper truth in her words. "There's much more at stake than your life, Jason. There's the future of your entire species. And you will soon find that the decisions you make will not only affect you, they will affect everyone around you." Jason's mind raced. The future of humanity? How could a regular guy like him possibly make any difference? How could he decide anything that mattered in such a monumental war? He wasn't equipped for this. He wasn't trained. He had no idea what he was up against, but as he looked into the Vulpine's eyes, something deep inside him stirred. Was it fear? Yes, it was fear. But it was also something else, something buried deep beneath all the confusion. Something Jason had never really acknowledged before. It was the stirrings of a choice that would change everything. "Then what do I do?" Jason asked, his voice quieter now, his gaze not leaving the Vulpine. For the first time, the Vulpine smiled. Smile that wasn't just about her own secrets, but also about the journey she had just set him on. "You prepare," she said simply. "You learn. And then, when the time comes, you choose which side you will stand on." Jason could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him, and though he was terrified, there was a spark of something else deep within him. This was no longer about the mundane life he had once known. It was about survival, about his place in a much bigger world. And for the first time, Jason felt like he might be capable of facing it. But would it be enough? As he turned to leave, the Vulpine's voice followed him softly. "Remember, human, the war has already begun." And with that, Jason stepped deeper into a world that he wasn't ready for. but was now irrevocably a part of. Jason didn't sleep much that night. His thoughts were consumed by everything the Vulpine had said. The war, his role in it. The weight of the words kept replaying in his mind. He could hardly believe it. He wasn't prepared for any of it. What could he, an ordinary human with no special abilities, possibly offer to a galactic-scale conflict? The morning came too quickly, and as Jason prepared to leave the base, he felt a growing sense of dread. What would he even do next? How could he navigate this strange new reality? The Vulpine had said he had a choice, but the choices were unclear, shrouded in mystery. He had so many questions, but no answers seemed to come. A guard at the entrance waved him through, and Jason walked out into the crisp morning air, the weight of the world pressing down on him. The streets were calm, the city around him oblivious to the impending chaos. As he passed through the crowds of people, he couldn't help but feel like an outsider in his own world. How could they go about their daily lives while everything was about to change? His phone buzzed in his pocket, snapping him from his thoughts. It was a message from an unknown number. He hesitated for a moment before opening it. Meet me at the old observatory, midnight. Don't bring anyone. It was signed simply, the Vulpine. His heart skipped a beat. The Vulpine? Why was she contacting him? What did she want now? The message was direct, no room for misinterpretation. Jason didn't know what to expect, but his gut told him he couldn't ignore it. The choice had already been made for him. He had to go. That night, Jason found himself at the observatory, a derelict building on the outskirts of the city that had long since stopped functioning as it once did. It looked abandoned, and the silence around it felt oppressive. The stars were visible in the clear sky, but Jason couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him. He'd never been here before, and yet, it felt strangely familiar, as though it was a place where destiny and the unknown collided. As he stepped through the rusted doors of the observatory, a low voice spoke from the shadows, "Jason." He turned quickly, his heart racing. There, standing in the doorway, was the Vulpine. She was even more imposing now, her glowing markings a constant shift of colors, reflecting the light from the moon. Her eyes held a certain depth, a wisdom that seemed endless. There was no sign of the warmth she had once shown, only a cool, calculating presence. "Come closer," she said, her voice firm but not unkind. Jason approached hesitantly, unsure of what she had in store for him now. Was she going to give him more cryptic messages? Or was she going to explain exactly what was happening? What was this war she had spoken of, and why was it happening? His head was still spinning, trying to process everything. The Vulpine gestured to the far corner of the room, where a large, circular platform stood. It was strange, out of place, almost as if it had been left behind from a bygone era. It was covered in strange symbols, alien markings Jason couldn't decipher. "This is where it begins," she said. "The training." Jason felt a knot form in his stomach. Training? What kind of training? He had no skills that would help him in a war. He wasn't special. He wasn't a soldier. He wasn't anything important. The more he thought about it, the more he doubted his ability to even survive whatever was coming. "Do not doubt yourself," the Vulpine said, almost as if she had read his mind. "You have already been marked for something greater than you realize." "What do you mean?" Jason asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm just a regular guy. I don't know how to fight. I don't even know what this war is about." The Vulpine's gaze softened for a moment, and for the briefest instant, Jason saw a flicker of something like sympathy. Then she spoke again, her tone much firmer. "You are not alone in this, Jason. The training will awaken something in you, something hidden deep within your DNA. Your species has a potential you have yet to tap into. You've been chosen not because you are special, but because you are connected to a force much larger than yourself." Jason felt his pulse quicken. "Awaken something in me?" What did she mean? Could he really change, become someone else entirely? Could he really step into a role that was far beyond anything he had ever imagined? Without another word, the Vulpine stepped onto the platform and Jason followed her, his legs heavy with uncertainty. The symbols on the platform began to glow. Faintly as they stood together, he could feel a strange energy beginning to hum beneath his feet. It was unlike anything he had ever felt before. It was as if the air itself had become charged, alive with power. The first step is to understand your own mind, the Vulpine explained. The war you will face is as much within you as it is in the outside world. Only once you learn to master yourself can you hope to stand against what is coming. Jason took a deep breath. His thoughts were a jumble, fear and doubt mixing with curiosity. This was unlike anything he had ever experienced. The Vulpine stood still beside him, her eyes closed, seemingly focused on something far beyond the room. "What are you doing?" Jason asked, feeling a strange pressure building in the air. "I am teaching you to focus," she said softly. "To access the energy that flows within every living thing. It is in the very essence of the universe. And it is in you." Jason felt the pull of her words, as if they resonated with something deep inside him. He closed his eyes, trying to clear his mind. For a brief moment, the hum beneath the platform grew louder, almost like a heartbeat. Then, suddenly, he felt its surge of warmth spread through his chest, a gentle but undeniable power flowing through him. It was like he could feel the energy of the earth, the stars, the very fabric of the universe itself. His mind began to clear, and for the first time he felt something other than fear. He felt alive. "Now," the Vulpine's voice cut through the rising energy, "you will begin to understand what you are capable of, and what you must do to survive the war." Jason stood still, his breath shallow, as the power within him began to grow. This was only the beginning, and yet it felt like everything he had known was about to be turned upside down. Jason's mind buzzed with newfound awareness, as the energy flowed through him. It was as if a curtain had been pulled back, revealing a hidden world of power and connection that had always existed just beneath the surface. He had never felt anything like this before, like he had suddenly tapped into something ancient, primal, and yet utterly foreign. The strange hum beneath the platform continued, vibrating through his body as he tried to make sense of what was happening. The Vulpine remained silent beside him, her eyes closed in concentration. She didn't seem surprised, nor did she offer any guidance. She just let the moment unfold. "Focus, Jason," she said softly, her voice a calm anchor in the swirling chaos of sensations flooding his mind. "Don't try to control it. Let it flow through you. Trust yourself." He closed his eyes again, allowing the warmth to envelop him. The pressure in his chest deepened, but there was no panic. He wasn't afraid. The power felt natural, as if it was part of him all along. As though he had always known it was there, waiting for him to notice. His heartbeat slowed, and his breathing became steady as the warmth spread throughout his body. A strange clarity filled his mind, and with it came an understanding of the Vulpine's words. The war is not just out there. It is within you, Jason. He reached out with his mind, trying to grasp at the energy he now sensed. At first, it felt like trying to hold water with bare hands, slipping through his fingers no matter how hard he tried. But then, slowly, he began to feel a connection. It wasn't a direct manipulation of power, but more like a symbiosis. Wasn't controlling the energy. He was merging with it. Suddenly, a sharp burst of light erupted in his mind's eye, and the air around them crackled, vibrating with intensity. Jason's breath caught in his throat. He could feel the power of the universe itself running through his veins, pulsing with every heartbeat. The ground beneath his feet felt alive, as if it was resonating with the same energy. The Vulpine opened her eyes, and a soft smile touched her lips. "You're starting to understand." Jason nodded slowly, his mind still reeling from the flood of sensations. It was overwhelming but exhilarating. The energy was both inside and outside of him. He was both part of it and separate from it. It was an intricate balance, an ancient force that connected all living things. And for the first time, he felt truly alive in a way he never had before. The Vulpine stepped back from the platform, her glowing figure casting a soft light in the darkness of the observatory. Now, Jason, you must understand that this power is not just for you. It is for the survival of your kind. You are connected to the energy of the universe, but you are also connected to those who fight alongside you. Jason's mind was spinning, but he managed to focus enough to ask, "What do you mean? How can this power help me fight a war I don't even understand?" The Vulpine regarded him with a piercing gaze. "This power is not just a weapon. It is a bridge between you and the universe, between you and the beings you will face in this war. It will help you tap into the potential of every living thing you encounter. But only if you can learn to control it." "Control it?" Jason repeated, his voice tinged with disbelief. "How can I control something like this?" The Vulpine's gaze softened for a moment, and she stepped closer. "Through training, through understanding, and most importantly, through trust. You must learn to trust yourself, Jason. Trust that you are meant to wield this power, not as a weapon, but as a means to connect. That is the true strength." Jason felt a strange weight settle in his chest. It wasn't fear, it was the gravity of responsibility. For the first time, he understood that he wasn't just being trained for the sake of battle. He was being trained to understand something far greater than himself. The war, the conflict, the power, it was all interconnected. And his role was not to simply survive, but to bridge the gap between what was human and what was alien. He took a deep breath, centering himself, and let the energy continue to flow through him. The warmth returned, stronger now, more tangible. It was like he was learning to breathe in rhythm with the universe itself. Slowly, as he focused, the power began to settle. It was no longer overwhelming. It felt right. It felt like it had always been part of him. The Vulpine nodded approvingly. "You are beginning to understand, Jason, but you are still far from ready. There is much more to learn, much more to control." Jason looked at her, determination flickering in his chest. "I'm ready. Teach me." The Vulpine's eyes gleamed with something akin to respect. "Good, then we begin." Over the following weeks, Jason's training intensified. Each day felt like an eternity. He learned to harness the energy within him, to focus it, and direct it. At first, the power had been overwhelming, a raging storm he couldn't control. But as time passed, he began to shape it, using it to move objects, enhance his senses, and even tap into the instincts of other living creatures around him. The Vulpine was a demanding teacher, constantly pushing him beyond his limits. There were moments of frustration when he felt as though he would break, but each time he faltered, the Vulpine was there, guiding him, reminding him of his potential. He could feel his body changing, adapting to the energy coursing through him. His reflexes sharpened, his senses heightened. He was becoming something more than just human, something larger, something more powerful. But with each new ability came a deeper understanding of the war ahead. This wasn't just a battle of strength. It was a war of connections. Jason had to learn not just to control his power, but to connect with the world around him, to reach out to those who would fight alongside him, to understand the forces at play. There were moments when Jason doubted himself, when he questioned whether he was truly ready for the conflict ahead. But each time, he remembered the Vulpine's words. "This is not just for you. This is for the survival of your species." And with that knowledge, he pressed on, ready for whatever would come next. Because no matter how terrifying or uncertain the future was, Jason knew one thing for sure. He wasn't alone. Jason stood in the middle of the training room, sweat dripping down. His face, his breath coming in ragged gasps. His muscles burned, his mind buzzed with exhaustion, but the Vulpine's voice echoed in his ears, urging him to keep going. "Focus, Jason. You must learn to control your emotions," she said, her tone calm yet unwavering. "Your power is not something to fear. It is an extension of yourself. Do not fight it. Work with it." Jason clenched his fists, trying to calm the storm of thoughts in his mind. For weeks now, he had been training to harness the energy flowing through him, training to control the power that had awakened within him. At times it felt like he was on the edge of something incredible, but other times it felt like he was teetering on the brink of losing control entirely. The power was immense, and the fear of it had been a constant companion. But today, as he focused his energy, a new sensation washed over him. It was subtle, almost imperceptible at first, but there was a shift. His mind cleared, the storm inside him quieted, and for a fleeting moment, Jason felt at peace. The Vulpine watched him closely, her eyes glinting with a quiet approval. "You are learning, Jason, but this is just the beginning." As she spoke, a strange hum filled the air, a vibration that seemed to come from deep within the very walls of the observatory. Jason's eyes snapped open, his heart racing. The Vulpine looked toward the doorway, her expression hardening. "Prepare yourself. The time has come for you to face what you've been training for," she said, her voice a sharp contrast to her calm demeanor moments before. Jason's chest tightened with anxiety. Was he ready for this? The war, the enemies, the unknown. It all felt so distant until now. He had been focused on his training, on understanding the power within him, but he had never truly grasped the reality of what awaited. He had been so caught up in learning how to fight that he had forgotten why he needed to fight. "Who are we facing?" Jason asked, his voice steady despite the storm of questions swirling inside him. The Vulpine's eyes darkened as she stepped closer. "You will soon learn. But understand this, you are not fighting just one enemy. You are fighting an ancient force that has long desired to control the galaxy. And they are not just invaders from another world. They are something far more dangerous." Jason's mind raced. He had thought the war was a simple matter of opposing forces, but the way the Vulpine spoke now, her voice filled with such dread, suggested that the enemy was something more insidious. The Vulpine raised her hand, and in the blink of an eye, the air in front of them shimmered, forming a glowing projection of an alien figure. Jason took an instinctive step back, his heart pounding. The creature before him was tall, its form humanoid but distinctly alien, its skin a dark shade of purple, smooth and almost metallic. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and its expression was cold, calculating. "This is one of them," the Vulpine said, her tone laced with disdain. "The Zalari. They are the ones who seek to dominate the galaxy. They have been watching Earth for years, manipulating your governments, infiltrating your societies, all to prepare for the moment when they would strike. They are not just invaders, they are manipulators, control freaks who have the power to bend minds, to twist emotions. And they will stop at nothing to conquer everything in their path." Jason's breath caught in his throat. The Zalari were no mere enemies. They weren't here to fight, they were here to dominate, to control. He could feel the gravity of their presence, even in the form of a projection. "Why haven't we heard of them before?" Jason asked, trying to process the enormity of what he was hearing. "How are they so powerful?" The Vulpine's eyes flickered with a mixture of frustration and sadness. "The Zalari are ancient. Their species is older than most, and they have learned to hide in the shadows. They have infiltrated your systems, your governments, manipulating events to create division and conflict. They thrive on chaos and fear. They have planted themselves in key positions, using your weaknesses to build a network of power." Jason was silent for a moment, his mind struggling to keep up. The thought that the Zalari had been behind so many of the world's problems, wars, unrest, political chaos made his blood run cold. They weren't just fighting for survival. They were sowing the seeds of destruction, using humanity's own fears and doubts to weaken them. And how do we stop them? Jason finally asked, his voice a little shakier than he intended. The Vulpine's eyes narrowed as she looked at the projection of the Zalari. The Zalari are not easily defeated. They control minds, they manipulate emotions, they have vast fleets, and they understand your weaknesses better than you do. But you, she said, turning back to Jason, you are the key. Your training, your connection to the energy of the universe, gives you the ability to fight them in ways they cannot comprehend. You must use your power to connect with those around you, to unify your species, to expose the Zalari for what they truly are. Jason's heart beat faster as he absorbed her words. The power that had once terrified him now felt like a lifeline. It was the only thing that could save humanity from the control of these manipulative invaders. But I'm just one person, Jason said, shaking his head. How can I possibly do all of that? The Vulpine placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch firm but gentle. You are not alone, Jason. You will find allies. There are others like you, others who have awakened to the truth, but you must be the one to lead them. You must be the one to rally them, to bring them together. The Zalari are counting on humanity's division and fear. You must overcome that. Jason's mind was spinning, but for the first time, he felt a sense of clarity. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for the future of humanity, for the survival of everything he had ever known. And while the enemy seemed vast, insurmountable, and nearly invincible, he knew he couldn't back down. I'll do it, Jason said, his voice firm with resolve. I don't know how, but I'll do it. I'll find the strength. I'll find the allies, and I'll stop them. The Vulpine nodded approvingly. Good, but remember, Jason, the Zalari's power is not just physical. They will test you, test your will, your trust in others. But if you are to defeat them, you must learn to trust yourself and the power you possess within. The fight ahead will not be easy, but you are ready. Jason stood tall, his chest filled with purpose. The road ahead was uncertain, and the battle would be fierce. But he knew one thing for sure, he wasn't alone in this fight, and he wouldn't back down. The Zalari may have thought they could control humanity, but they had underestimated one thing, the power of connection, of unity, of trust, and Jason was ready to show them just how wrong they were. The time had come. Jason stood on the edge of the ruined city, staring out over the battlefield that stretched before him. The horizon was filled with the distant glow of alien ships, their dark forms casting an ominous shadow over the world they sought to dominate. The Zalari had come in full force, their invasion far more devastating than anything humanity had ever faced. Cities had fallen, governments had crumbled, and hope had seemed to fade into the chaos. But Jason was not alone. The Vulpine, once a distant and mysterious ally, had been at his side through every step of his journey. Her guidance, her training, and the lessons she had instilled in him had brought him to this moment. Now the energy within him hummed with power, no longer overwhelming, but a force he understood. A force that felt like a natural extension of who he had become. Around him, the ragtag group of human resistance fighters, soldiers, scientists, civilians, stood ready. Some had awakened to the power that Jason had tapped into. Others had simply come to fight with what they had. But they were united now, stronger than ever, ready to take the fight to the Zalari. Jason had led them through the weeks of preparation, bringing together people who had once been divided by fear and doubt. They were more than just soldiers now. They were a family, bound by a common cause. We're ready, the Vulpine said, her voice steady. She stood beside him, her presence a silent reminder of the stakes. But remember, Jason, this is not just about fighting the Zalari. This is about trust. Trust in yourself, in the people around you, and in the power that flows through you. You have prepared for this moment. You are ready." Jason nodded, feeling the weight of her words. The battle ahead would be the ultimate test, not just of strength, but of unity, of resolve, of everything he had learned. He knew that the Zalari would try to manipulate, to divide, to control. They would prey on fear, on doubt, on the weakness of the human spirit. But he had seen firsthand how powerful humanity could be when they came together. "We'll stop them," Jason said, his voice unwavering, though his heart raced. He wasn't sure how this battle would unfold, but he knew that he had come too far to fail. The future of his species rested on this final stand. The battle raged on. The human resistance, now armed with the power they had awakened within themselves, fought with a ferocity that caught the Zalari by surprise. The energy that Jason had learned to harness became a symbol of hope, a beacon that spread through the ranks of the resistance. It wasn't just about strength anymore, it was about connection, about unity, about the power of belief. Jason fought alongside them, his power surging as he connected with the energy of the universe, focusing it into blasts of light and force that shattered the alien invaders' defenses. But it wasn't enough. The Zalari were powerful, and their manipulation of the battlefield seemed endless. For every victory, there was a setback. For every inch gained, they lost ground. It was then that Jason understood the truth the Vulpine had been trying to teach him. This battle wasn't about defeating the Zalari on the physical plane. It wasn't just about strength or power. It was about something deeper. He turned to the Vulpine, who was standing tall amid the chaos, her eyes closed in concentration. She was using the same energy Jason had tapped into, guiding the resistance with her presence. But he could see the exhaustion in her eyes. This wasn't a fight they could win alone, and that's when he realized he needed to bring them all together. "Everyone, listen," Jason shouted, his voice carrying across the battlefield. He didn't use his energy to amplify the words. Didn't need to. He didn't need to be loud. He just needed them to feel the truth of what he was saying. This isn't just about fighting. This is about us, all of us, together. He reached out, letting his power flow into the ground beneath him, into the air, into everything. He connected with each of them, his mind reaching across the battlefield, across every soldier, every fighter, every resistance member. It wasn't just physical, it was emotional, spiritual. He felt the energy of every human around him, felt their doubts, their fears, but also their hope, their resolve. "You are not alone," he continued, his voice steady. "We are connected, all of us. We are stronger together than we are apart. The Zalari want to divide us, to make us fear each other, to make us doubt ourselves. But they don't know what we're capable of. We fight with more than just power. We fight with love, with trust, with everything that makes us human." The resistance fighters, many of whom had been on the edge of giving up, felt it. They felt the shift in the air. They felt the power. Not just from Jason, but from each other. It was a ripple of connection, an unspoken bond that united them all. They weren't just fighting for survival anymore, they were fighting for each other. And just like that, the tide of battle began to turn. The Zalari, who had once seemed like an unstoppable force, began to falter. The cracks in their unity, in their control, began to show. As the humans fought not just with strength, but with the power of their collective will, the Zalari's manipulations weakened. The soldiers who had once been isolated by fear were now a force of unity, pushing back the invaders with newfound determination. Jason led the charge, his power a beacon of hope, as he moved with the Vulpine at his side. They fought with everything they had, and the resistance followed suit. The energy in the air was palpable, a growing wave that swept through them all. And then, at the heart of the battlefield, Jason saw the Zalari commander, the one who had orchestrated the invasion. The figure was cloaked in shadows, its eyes glowing with malevolent power. It was waiting, calculating, ready to strike. Jason knew that this was the final confrontation, the moment that would decide everything, without hesitation. He ran toward the commander, his power surging as he reached out, not to fight with brute force, but to connect. The Zalari's power tried to push back, to manipulate, to divide, but Jason held firm. He reached out to the commander's mind, connecting, breaking through the mental barriers the Zalari had built. "You cannot control us," Jason said, his voice calm, his words a reflection of everything he had learned. "We are united. We are stronger than your fear." The Zalari commander's eyes flickered with doubt, a brief hesitation. And in that moment, the connection Jason had made with his allies, with humanity, broke through. The commander's mental grip shattered, and with it, the last remnants of the Zalari's control. The battle ended. The Zalari retreated, their once unstoppable forces crumbling before the unity of humanity. Jason stood amidst the rubble, breathing heavily, his body aching, but his heart filled with a deep sense of triumph. The war was over. The Zalari had been defeated, not by power alone, but by the strength of connection, trust, and unity. As the sun began to rise, Jason turned to the Vulpine. Her eyes glowed with quiet pride, but there was a deep sadness there too. "You've done it," she said softly. "You've led humanity to victory, but remember, the fight never ends. There will always be those who seek to divide, to conquer. But now you know how to fight. And you know what it means to be truly strong." Jason nodded, feeling the weight of her words. The battle was over, but humanity's future was just beginning. And with that, Jason stepped forward, ready to lead the way into a new era for Earth, united, strong, and connected.